Welcome to SAT Interviews with your host Farai Mavuti. Today I sit down with South African actress, model, as well as pageant title holder, Miss Universe 2019, as well as Miss South Africa 2019. It's going to be an incredible honor to sit down with her, not only because of her notable achievements, but furthermore about the many fascinating projects that she's undergoing. Join us.
Introducing Sawi the chatbot from Nyaradzo. Speak to Sawi for all your queries and inquiries. The benefits of having Sawi by your side are endless. When you need to know about our policy, Nyaradzo products, payment platforms, claims, the Sawira International Plan, where to find the Nyaradzo branches, Nyaradzo contact details, how to apply, and any questions you may have. And she can help you find who you want to speak to. For your convenience, you can ask about anything, from our funeral services, counseling to your payments, and much more. Experience the benefit of having Sawi by your side. App Sawi today on WhatsApp number 0712 992 892. Nyaradzo, Sawira Mukuru, Omgane Omkulu.
Zozi, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, you're currently in London. So, of course, to start off, how's your trip and how are you finding your stay so far?
It's been fantastic. Very fascinating. When we were landing, the pilot said, it's a beautiful day in London today, 18 degrees Celsius. And I thought, what? What is he talking about? But it's been fantastic. I've had a fantastic stay so far.
That's great. So, Zozi, one of the things that fascinates me, especially when we're doing the research for this interview, is your humble background, coming from where you've come from and, university stages and having accomplished everything that the typical African family would require you to do.
Yes.
You go on to then become this larger-than-life character.
Yeah.
Tell me where it all starts.
Well, before that, interesting enough, it's funny that you mentioned the whole African parents thing. My dad still calls me to ask, so when are you finishing some of the post-grad? I'm like, have you seen the news? Have you seen the news lately? Well, sure. I mean, looking back at where everything started, I think it's always been there. From a very young age, I've always kind of known the direction that I wanted to take in life. And that was informed by the kinds of, people I looked up to, and I read a lot when I was young. There's something I used to do with my grandmother because she loves to read. And so all these people that I read about were incredible, doing all these amazing things, people I watched on TV. I would look at them and felt, that I want to be there. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I didn't know it would be through Miss South Africa or Miss Universe, but I've always known at the back of my mind that, that's what I wanted to do because I felt so much at home in that space. And so that's where it kind of started for me, just visioning that for myself as a child and making sure that I was working towards it all my, young adult life as well. And now I'm finally here.
And quite a fascinating story. So, of course, childhood, quite, as you've quite eloquently described it. I want to know what then triggers this moment of, or what we call it a moment of conjuncture, when you then begin to go into the fashion space, modeling and so forth. You're doing a degree in technology, and of course, they would think that your aspirations would be more corporate than it would be the arts.
So I actually did a degree at a University of Technology, but I did it in public relations and communications. Right. So it kind of does live in the same sphere, but the other one is more of a, behind the scenes work. And so I worked at an agency and I knew that I didn't want to stay there, for the longest time. As I was working day in, day out, again, I'm behind the scenes and I'm watching, the people who are in front of the scenes and doing this. And more, I felt like, no, I really, need to get into that space. And so that's where the shift happened for me. I think the year was 2016.
Right.
There was a lot of I don't know if people know here, but there was a fees must fall movement in
Yes,
South Africa.
yes.
So what was happening there is that a lot of students had a lot of debt and loans in schools, and they hiked up the school fees, and a lot of people couldn't really, afford to go to school anymore. And so I was unfortunately one of those people who, got financially excluded from school, because then they told you can't register.
Wow.
And so in the year 2016, I had to take a gap year and to go home to figure out what to do next. And that's the first time that I decided, you know what, if this door is a little bit fuzzy and closing, maybe this is an opportunity for me to actually try and do what I've always wanted to do. So then I tried for Miss South Africa for the very first time, 2016 towards 2017. But I didn't really make it, that much further in that competition. I made it semifinals, but there was just something about that moment and the gravity of it all coming, from the small village that I did, and everyone was just so excited about it. And, when they looked at me being there, it gave them so much hope as well to know that, this is possible. And so in as much as I didn't make it further, it had now become so much more than my dreams and aspiration, but about other people as well.
Yeah.
And so when I went back to complete school in 2017, 2018 to graduate, then at the back of my mind, I was like, I have to go back and complete, this dream that I've started. And it's been a whirlwind of excitement since then.
So, at that moment when you don't get in the first
Yes.
year, but you go back because your community.
Absolutely.
So it's not about you anymore. It's bigger than.
It became so much. It became so much bigger than that.
Wow.
And I've told this story before, and I'm sure people will be like, "Oh, this is that story
Not
again."
our audience.
But I went home to my village, my father's birthplace, and as I was walking around, there was an old man there who was like just herding his sheep and animals. And he, so when he notices me, he says, "Oh, is it you? The girl who's on the newspapers about this thing that you're doing." I said, "Yes, yeah, it's me." And he said, I'm just an old man here, and I don't know what it is that you're doing, but whatever it is, just know that everyone is so proud, and it has every young person in the village just so excited, about just possibilities of what we could have as our people who live here. And so I just remember in that moment feeling so warm about it, because this is someone who's so unfamiliar with the fashion world and entertainment. He didn't know what it was about, but he knew that it could really be used as, a tool to kind of uplift and help the community. And so that's really why I was like, even if I didn't want to now at this moment, I thought to myself, if everyone is this happy and proud with me just being in the semifinals, imagine what could happen if I actually won, not only now for this small village, but I mean, what does it mean, for South Africa as well. And so it was one of the many reasons why I decided to go back again 2 years later.
Wow, and what a road show it has been.
It really has.
So now you have gotten to the height of Miss South Africa.
Yes.
And what inspires the move to? Of course, I'm sure it's part of the protocol to then go towards Miss Universe.
Miss Universe.
So what is your thinking around this, and what are the odds to you at that moment?
So when you do win your national pageant with most, you have to now go and compete internationally. So I knew that was going to be the next step, and it was very interesting, because when I won Miss South Africa at first, there was a lot of doubt. Because of the way that I had looked, my look was just not really something that they had seen before in that space, and so I thought it was going to be interesting to see internationally, what they thought about it. Because the minute that I won, now I started getting international recognition, because people knew I was going to be going to Miss Universe. And a lot of comments came in of, I don't think we're gonna do well this year. It was really people really thought this was the year that we were going to utterly fail at Miss Universe. But this is the first month, that I had been Miss South Africa. They were just like, oh no, this is not happening for us this year. But the more, days moved by the time I got to the second month, people now started thinking, okay, maybe maybe, you know, we do have a chance. You know, because this just started warming up, and there was just sort of a warmth in in our country, and a welcoming, you know, of this new Miss South Africa. And so by the time I went to Miss Universe, I'd now had, you know, so much support from back home, because they were just, you know, so proud. And then, you know, get to Miss Universe. Again, I don't look like any other Miss South Africa that has ever represented South Africa at Miss Universe. So the same conversation now begins globally of, you know, there's aspects of colorism, there's aspects of racism, and just so many, you know, different things.
And how are you
Coming
dealing
in.
with this criticism or these different concerns
Yeah.
that you're
You know, at first it was very challenging, because I am someone who moved from maybe like 1,000 followers on Instagram. I was never on social media. I never was a fan of social media. And so my space was always very much protected. But now for the first time, I'm now receiving so many followers, so many comments, so much attention. And at first it was hard, because I thought, you know, what is going on? I'm not used, you know, to this. But the more the comments started coming in, the more I felt sure that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and at this time. It is very much needed, because someone has to kind of put a crack and to open this door for a possibility of, you know, other young women coming up who look like me, who identify with my story as well. And so I thought, you know what? Let me be in this space. Let me make them uncomfortable, so that they know that I'm supposed to be here. And so that's kind of how I got through, you know, all the hate comments and everything. I thought, okay, that's okay. You can throw all the comments, because what it means is the next people coming are going to land in a much softer space than I did.
So and that's an incredible point to make, so that the next generation can have a softer landing. And I say this as a father to a daughter who is also brown skinned, who loves her natural hair, because that's what we're trying to embed in her, right? Now, this is the moment where it gets fascinating, because now your country has hope. So all the naysayers are saying, who were once saying, that we have no possibility of winning, are now
Yes.
beginning to realize, because of the momentum you're getting internationally.
Yes.
Talk to me about that moment when the penny drops for the nation, for the naysayers.
Yeah. So I would say the penny somehow started dropping even before I went to Miss Universe.
Right.
Because as I became Miss South Africa, I started touring
Right.
the country for like about a month, doing interviews. There's a lot of media. I was meeting and having a lot of engagement with people.
Right.
And I don't know what it is. I can't explain what it is that clicked to them, that made them feel different, you know, as they did before.
But at that moment, you felt accepted?
I did, absolutely, absolutely. You know, there was a struggle at the beginning, but I will never lie and say the support didn't start coming in, the acceptance didn't start coming in, you know, from my country. They rallied behind me, and they still do. You know, it's such a proud moment for them. You know, even by the time I stepped onto the Miss Universe stage, I remember at an interview before going on stage at Miss Universe saying, you know, I feel the millions of people standing with me in this interview room. It's not just me, just because of the support that they've just been bringing in. So it was very nice to see that shift of them now having hope of, we actually can do this. It's possible for us. And so to see it actually come into fruition was incredible.
You know, that's you know, a brilliant you know, story, but also it creates a wonderful segue for me when I'm thinking about, you know, what that moment meant, not just for South Africa, but for Africa as a whole. And also something you had pointed to earlier, you know, the politics of colorism, the politics of hair, and being in the UK, it's an incredible topic for us, because purely because of the history and imaging, the symbolism of what is the dominant tribe in as far as who defines beauty. And you breach that. You break that protocol, not only for the South African, not only for the African, but the African diaspora, the Jamaicans, the Black Americans who've struggled with this fight for many years. did you understand at that particular moment that this is what you were doing?
Yes, at that particular moment, absolutely. So it's very interesting, when a black woman sports her natural hair, people always see it as some kind of political statement, whether it's intentional or not intentional. But for me, at first, it was never intentional. When I cut my hair, it wasn't for the purposes of, sticking it to the man. It was just me cutting my hair and feeling like I wanted a change in identification, So I cut my hair, and I also liked how it looked. I felt like, this. I feel so much more comfortable looking like this, and that was like 5 years ago. That was way before Miss South Africa, way before Miss Universe. And so when I entered Miss South Africa, I was now confronted with the choice of whether to go on ahead with this hair or to change it to suit, that kind of environment, because the natural hair was never really a thing. And so it was in that moment now that I finally decided to intentionally walk into that space with this hair, because I thought to myself, why am I even having a battle with myself in my mind about whether or not to change this hair? I was having conversations with my sisters as well, and other people advising me as well and asking me, so are you going to change your hair or are you going to keep it? And so I think it was then that I decided I was going to keep it. It now became intentional.
And was there any pressure externally to change it?
I wouldn't say pressure, nobody was forcing me to do it, but there were like some suggestions of, you might be hurting your chances if you don't, succumb to whatever that space usually looks like. But I wouldn't necessarily, call it pressure, because then that would feel like, people were forcing. But there definitely were suggestions of, if I want better chances at, winning this thing, I might want to change my hair. And this actually takes me to a conversation I had with a very close friend of mine that recently passed, Chesley Christ. She was also sporting, natural curly hair. And she usually said to me, Zozi, when I started out with pageants, I used to straighten my hair. And the reason why she did that is because every time she used her natural hair in a competition, she always placed low. She said, every time I did my natural hair, I always placed low. Every time I straightened it, my placement and ratings were a little bit higher. And so we're not imagining things, there was actual proof, that this is something that was happening. And so, which is why some people would suggest to me as well, and, are you sure you want to hurt your chances? But I wanted to stick to my gut, I wanted to really say, this is our hair, this is who we are, and it should really be at a global standing with any other kind of hair. It is as beautiful as it is. It's not a political statement. It's who you are. It's who we are. And so.
And I suppose, on behalf of those that can't speak for themselves, who are here in the UK, thank you for standing up, because well, in as much as the intention was not to be political, naturally the topic is political. It's
absolutely,
politics.
It is.
And there is that easier route to take, which is, just do as the Jones do. Yeah. But you chose to confront that. Absolutely. So well done to you.
Thank you.
Now, of course, you are now at this height of, Miss Universe, universally known now. And you have great opportunities. Currently in London. Africa Fashion Week.
Yes.
Tell me about this moment. Now you're traveling around the world, and now here you are, Africa Fashion Week. Apparently you're going to be the star, the headline of magazine 2054,
yes,
which is being launched here in London. Tell me about these moments. What's your life looking like now? I'm sure it's crazy.
Oh, it's very exciting. I mean, we are all coming from a pandemic, and it hit us all in so many different ways. And for me, the biggest part was I wasn't really able to travel. We all weren't able to really leave. And so now that the world is open, it's just become so busy with travel for me. But the most beautiful thing is it's travel with purpose and intention. So I'm not just going to these countries, not, doing work that I feel is purposeful. Right now I am in London for Africa Fashion Week, which for me, I think it's so incredible because we spoke about this off camera about, how people are now catching on, to Africa and what it is that we're capable of. And I always think, people are not only now catching on, they always have caught on. But now I think the difference is that we too have come to realize our greatness. And, young people now are so bold in their blackness and their Africanness. We want to show it off all the time. And so that's why I'm so happy to be here for Africa Fashion Week, to hold the pen for ourselves as South African, to rewrite our own stories, because for the longest time people were telling our stories for us, and that's what makes this special. That's what makes 54 magazine special, because now we get to use our own voice. We get to say this is who we are from our own perspective, from our own eyes. See us. That's what it says.
See us indeed, and seeing you they are, clearly, being Miss Universe and all. But one of the fascinating things about everything you've said is that the stereotypical thinking around modeling and fashion is that there's no broad thinking around this. There's no struggle. There's no fight. You're just a pretty face. But clearly, you've breached that particular rule as well. And what's fascinating about it for me, I think back to this, your opening statement, right, at Miss Universe, and how you talk about the people that came before you, the women that came before you, and the fight that they demonstrated, and the resilience they equally taught you, to the point in which it gave you an opportunity to always confront challenges.
Absolutely.
And I want to think back to that moment and coincide it with this new movie you're in, Women King. Not only the symbolism and the impact that image itself has on younger children that are coming up from Africa and all over the world as well. Tell me about this moment and your involvement, and how important that is, considering not only have you, faced off the criticism of the politics of beauty, but now here you are, giving the world rather an image that is positive and impactful for women.
Absolutely. When you speak of women who came before us, it makes me think of, there's a photo that was going around that became a meme of, I think it's a young woman. She has up a board that says...
With an afro.
No, not that one.
Oh, okay.
No, this one, she has it up and it says something like, "You will not mess with us. We are not our ancestors."
Oh.
I remember being bothered with that.
I remember that one.
I remember being bothered with that, in a sense, like I kind of got where she was coming from, but I thought to myself, the women of the past and our ancestors, they ran their mile, they did what they could, and so it didn't sit, they did what they could with what they had, and now it was just an opportunity for them to say we're doing it for the the next generation. And so when you mentioned the film, that I'm doing the Woman King, and what I said about people who came before us, it all just makes sense, because the Woman King is about black women of the 1800s in Africa who were fighting and protecting, their country.
And it's not a fictional story.
It's an actual thing that happened. You are speaking of woman matriarchs. This is something that we have. People don't talk about it a lot. In Africa, we had matriarchs in every village.
Shanti.
We had so many women leaders who, women are respected. They were respected in Africa, So when we look at things like slavery and colonization, it brought a lot of things like patriarchy as well, because it was never really an African story, but
if anything, colonization interrupted,
so this is what I'm trying to say. So this is why I'm so excited to be in this film. First film for me ever. I've never been,
And
so
congratulations.
thank you so much. And so when I found out that I was going to be, in the film, for me it was just more about the story and how people are going to continue to see us now as Africans and African women, because it's never in that light. It's never positive. And so to be celebrated that way is the most beautiful thing. To see a line of dark-skinned, beautiful, strong women being represented as such is incredible. And so it's something I'll always, be proud of, to say, I was a part of that, moment in history, because I think it is like a groundbreaking history moment for Black people, for Black women, Africans, and, the diaspora. And yeah, it's a pinch me moment. I mean, I remember my first day on set.
Right.
There's a particular scene that they were doing, and they were like, do you want to come watch and see what's happening? I remember the goosebumps that I got, and I felt really like teary-eyed in that moment for two reasons. Because I was just looking at this beautiful skin and imagining how people are going to receive it when they see it and they see that power of these women. And my second reason was just not believing in that moment that I was there, in this moment. This young girl from this small village, Yakutsolo, in the Eastern Cape, is in here at this set with these incredible, actors, and it's a moment I'll never forget.
And what do the people of Kotsolo say now?
Oh, they stay proud. I'm back. People who know me, I love home. I will travel. For instance, when I come back I'm going straight home.
Wow.
Because I always say I like to go drink from those waters at home, because it revives me in a way. So I'll travel, I'll work, and I'll go home. So I'm always home whenever I can. It's not the same anymore, though. I can't.
You can't be walking around and a grandfather says, it's you, my daughter, I told you.
It's not the same. It's quite busy. Right. My home has become somewhat a tourist attraction. A lot of people there, but in the most beautiful way.
Yeah.
And my parents always say, it's a village, we don't close doors here. Doors are always open. People are always coming in to celebrate and to still just, live in that moment of, again, possibilities and pride, and just everything that has happened.
It's funny because normally when we do SAT interviews at the Southern African Times, we sit down with policymakers and business people, and it's always a fascinating story after story. This one is the most humbling for me because when we started the Southern African Times, I sat down with one of my, who's a partner in the business, a white counterpart of mine, and he said to me, why are you so keen to start a media company? And I said to him, you have two daughters.
Yeah.
Would you like it if I continuously told you my story? And he said, hell no.
Yeah.
I said, because I'm Black, right? Exactly. We have to tell our own story. And this for me is a proud moment because this is something I can take to my daughter and say, this is your story. I'm inspired by your story.
Thank you.
So I suppose my final question would be, what happens next?
Oh, I mean,
what's in store for the future for you?
The world is full of possibilities. Well, for one, I love letting life happen. That's my first thing. Being able again to be in this film, I don't think it's anything that I would have imagined 3 years ago, but because of just how beautiful life is. And I think we forget that. We like to sit in gloom, and life can be beautiful.
Indeed.
And, my second really thing is I have a couple of things lined up. I have my foundation on the CSI side that I'm going to be launching very early next year. Because, when you become Miss Universe, people think your philanthropic ways end there. It's all for show and it's for that. But for me, it's never been about that. I love women. I love children. The importance of education as well is something that, I live by. And so that's what my foundation is going to be focusing on those three pillars of women, children and education. Because I just think as human beings, we are so much more than just our individual selves, and that the bigger picture is that we contribute however we can, to society. And it doesn't have to be a big gesture like a foundation for people. It's just the small things we do, daily, whether it's to give of our time, whether it's to give, just small, simple things. And so for me, I feel like that is going to be my best way for my contribution.
Yeah, and Zozi, it's not, and it may sound small, but the numbers of women, the girl child in education, in terms of having access to education, is quite staggering, especially on the continent.
Yes.
And for you to be able to take that as part of your journey, leveraging on the work, on your celebrity, leveraging on your network. I think it's fantastic work.
Thank you.
And it's great that you're doing it.
Thank you so much.
What's your final message, Zozi?
My final message is, shoo. That's always a difficult one. But what I want to say, especially to Africans, is that we are the absolute blueprint. We always have been. We've watched the world, take a lot, from us. And so I think what I want to say is we need to step into that and understand why people were doing that is because we are extremely powerful in so many different ways. We are beautiful people, we are smart, we're creative, we are all of these things. And one of our biggest mistakes, I guess, well, not really ours, is that when you look at history with slavery and colonization, is that the first thing that they did is to divide and conquer, and so when you look at what Africa is today and how sometimes we're not unified, it's because of those things that were put into the system of, we must always be against each other. But I think we need to realize now that in order for us to build an Africa that we want, we need to make it, a Pan-Africa where, we're all together, working together, collaborating, supporting each other. I think that's how we build this beautiful Africa that I think, we're all envisioning. So that's my final message, to just try and build this mega, Africa and take over the world, man. It's time. It's time.
It is time indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here at SAT Interviews. It's been a pleasure. See you next week. Take care.
Introducing Sawi the chatbot from Nyaradzo. Speak to Sawi for all your queries and inquiries. The benefits of having Sawi by your side are endless. When you need to know about our policy, Nyaradzo products, payment platforms, claims, the Sawira International Plan, where to find the Nyaradzo branches, Nyaradzo contact details, how to apply, and any questions you may have. And she can help you find who you want to speak to. For your convenience, you can ask about anything, from our funeral services, counseling to your payments, and much more. Experience the benefit of having Sawi by your side. App Sawi today on WhatsApp number 0712 992 892. Nyaradzo, Sawira Mukuru, Omgane Omkulu.